Hello, Gene Schwimmer here. Welcome to today's vlog. For obvious reasons, we've been focused for the past several weeks on the coronavirus pandemic. Not just we here in America, but pretty much around the world. It's understandable, but in the United States, we have to remember that we are suffering not just from one epidemic, pandemic for the world. Epidemic means within a single country. So as far, well, we'll just say pandemic, the coronavirus pandemic, but we have to remember that we have an epidemic that has existed since the election of Donald Trump as President of the United States. I speak, of course, of Trump derangement syndrome. That has struck a lot of people across the political spectrum, including so-called conservative Republicans who suddenly sound like liberals, at least in their criticism of Donald Trump, even when he articulates positions that they have, the never-Trumpers, that's what they call themselves, articulated in the past, even though he's implementing conservative policies, tax cuts, conservative justices and judges to the federal courts. You would think they would be happy, or at least they would be satisfied, at least to some extent. They're not. But I don't want to talk about them today, even though that is a very good example of Trump derangement syndrome, because it has also struck our media, our news media, our 95% Democrat media, and I could be found wrong on that. Maybe it's not 95%, maybe it's only 94%. They contribute overwhelmingly to the Democratic Party, and it's obvious that their goal since Trump became president is not to report the news, but to drive Donald Trump out of office, ideally, not have to wait for an election. But if you can't do that, then to defeat him in November, in the November election, and God knows what's going to happen if Trump is reelected. They're going to spend the next 4 years, the media, to get him removed from office before he'll have to leave anyways in 2024, actually 2025, January 2025. We'll have to wait and see. But the ramification that concerns me the most that I want to talk about today is, well, remember The Godfather, Godfather 2, when Fredo, and by Fredo I don't mean Chris Cuomo, I mean the Fredo in the movie, The Godfather, Godfather 2, when Fredo takes the side of Mo Green, the casino operator, and Michael Corleone says, don't ever take sides against the family again. I like to think of the United States, as much as we are fighting with each other sometimes, fortunately not a civil war, only rhetorically and at the ballot box, but I like to think of us as a family. I like to think that our media would not take sides against the family when there is a discrepancy or a conflict or a problem with China, for instance, that the media would take sides with the president, not support China, but they support China over and over again. Mika Brzezinski was on TV talking about, as I've talked about in the past, this drumbeat among MSNBC, CNBC, I think NBC too, a call from liberals at least to stop covering the daily coronavirus briefings because they give a platform to Trump. I wonder what they would have said about FDR's fireside chats that gave hope and assurance to the American people through the Depression. I guess you could call that a campaign platform for FDR, probably helped with his re-election. So I don't see their point with Trump, except that they hate Trump. They don't want to cover these briefings. That's number one. But another, well, I'm not going to go number one, number two. There are so many. I'll just go briefly over a couple. What really got me started on this was yesterday's briefing, where a Chinese reporter for a Chinese publication, she wasn't really asking a question, and that's what Trump called her out on. She started out with, China has sent yada yada number of masks and yada yada number of protective equipment, I think. I forgot the exact items. Trump interrupted her and said, that's a statement, not a question. And then the reporter switched over to, are you cooperating with China? They had a little back and forth. Trump said, where are you from? Are you working for China? You sound like you're working for China. She denied it. Trump said, well, who do you work for? And she said it was a Hong Kong, I forgot the Hong Kong publication, but it was a Hong Kong publication. And Trump said, is that owned by the Chinese government? She said, no, it's a private corporation, privately owned. And Trump said, good. And he continued talking about, he had been talking about the trade deal with China, that he was going to wait and see if China made good on the deal they signed to buy more goods from the United States. Now, how does that relate to Trump derangement syndrome? It relates this way, because after that exchange, the media jumped on Donald Trump, not just because she was Chinese, but because she's a woman also. So the reporter was a woman, so he got hit with both barrels, that he was being condescending towards China or whatever, and that he was, I guess, what's the term, mansplaining to a female journalist. But it turns out somebody did some research since that exchange and determined that it is, her publication is owned partly by China. But the media sided with this Chinese journalist before looking, and this happens all the time, before doing a little research, before looking into this company to find out who really owns it. Maybe Trump was right, and it turns out that Trump was right. Another instance of Trump being right and the media being wrong. But another manifestation of the media's Trump derangement syndrome that I think is very harmful, and it certainly bothers me, I hope it would bother some of you, is that the media accepts anything that China says while rejecting anything that Trump says, to the extent that they don't want to, some of them don't even want to broadcast the daily briefings, never mind that you get valuable information from, I mean, in fairness, Trump has a tendency to ramble sometimes. He'll start out these briefings with a very long statement, saying over and over again the same thing sometimes, not just, for instance, applauding the bravery of the healthcare workers who are going into the hospitals and dealing with coronavirus victims, but how they're so brave, they just go in, and I can't believe how brave they are. And that's fine the first time, but he says that over and over, and it turns into a long spiel. I have to say that is a valid criticism. But he hasn't been criticized for that by the liberals in the media, just for stating facts that they call lies. I mean, he could be wrong. His facts are not always accurate. That's fair. But they have the experts there. They can ask the experts and they can get the straight dope. But whatever China says, they take that at face value. They never question that. I'm just going to put up a couple of items here on the screen to illustrate what I mean. First, there's this blogger, David Berg. I think that's his name, Berge or Berg. I never heard it pronounced. I'm assuming it's David Berg. He tweets under the name Iowa Hawk. Here is his tweet, and well, you know how these tweets work, right? So the statement, the original statement, is on the bottom, and then the response is on the top. So this is from NBC News, and they tweeted, U.S. reports 1,264 coronavirus deaths in over 24 hours. Meanwhile, in China, where the pandemic broke out, not a single new coronavirus death was reported. And Iowa Hawk tweeted back, fun fact, China also never reported a single death at Tiananmen Square, where peaceful protesters were killed a number of years ago, and we still do business with China. I'm going to talk about that in a later vlog. But my point for today is you have NBC News, an American media outlet, favoring China, praising China, and I don't know, roundabout blaming Trump. They don't mention him, but they're saying that we had this many deaths and China didn't have any. Well, they started earlier, but China is responsible for all of those 1,264 deaths and more, not just in our country, but around the world. In our country, we are over 10,000 deaths as I'm reporting this, as I'm speaking to you today. But NBC doesn't care about that. They praise China. It is really astounding to me. I'll conclude today with a photo that really illustrates what I was just talking about, a Photoshop that somebody did. It really speaks for itself. You're talking about the old saying that a picture is worth 1,000 words. This is worth at least 1,000 words. Look. Does that not really illustrate exactly what I'm talking about? NBC News, because that tweet that I read you before was from NBC News, but it's not just NBC News. They ignore the Chinese death statistics to look at the U.S. death statistics. That's it for today. Thanks for stopping by as usual. Thumbs up if you like this video. Share it with anybody you think would also like the video. Got any comments? You can put them in the comment section below the video. You can put any questions you might have below the video too. Any requests for future topics, things you'd like me to talk about. I would love to get more subscribers, so subscribe, subscribe, subscribe. And finally come back and see me again. I look forward to seeing all of you again. And until I do see all of you again, bye.